The end of Hellhammer, and especially Celtic Frost, was when we became our own band. We wanted to define our own music with Celtic Frost. We felt we had to distance ourselves. Hellhammer was not the myth it is nowadays. It was a huge stumbling block for ourselves. On a personal level, we wanted to attain more quality as musicians. We had basically just begun to play. We wanted to become better musicians, and we felt in Hellhammer we didn't fully accomplish that. And on a business level, Hellhammer was ripped apart. The Hellhammer's EPs and demos were ripped apart in the press at the time. Also by the record companies, by most of the fans. There was only a very small circle of people that dug our music at the time. And when we formed Celtic Frost to give our music a much larger concept, Hellhammer proved to be a huge stumbling block. And of course that made us turn against our own work for a while, because we felt it hindered our advance.
And when we formed Celtic Frost, we didn't only say like, let's form a new band. We knew from the get-go that this would be a completely different entity, you know. We started to work out a concept. We developed this vision for what Celtic Frost was to become. We didn't only say like, okay, let's do something else, you know. We came up with the idea, the concept for the name, the ideas for the first 3 albums, including the titles, Morbid Tales, To Megatherion, Into the Pandemonium. We knew what the artwork was going to be, in what direction. We already had the rights by H.R. Giger, you know, mind you, to use his artwork for one of the covers with Hellhammer. We deliberately didn't do that because we thought the music wasn't ready for the artwork. We thought his artwork was so were such masterpieces, was such genius, that our abysmal music just didn't really suit it. So we wanted to come up with something, and we didn't even try, you know, plan on using it for the first record, for Morbid Tales. We knew that this would be for To Megatherion, for the second record. The first one, the first sleeve, the first record was there to establish the band, you know, to establish the music, and then give more depth to it with, of course, To Megatherion. And this were already things that we did when we started working with Celtic Frost, you know.
We liked the extremity of Hellhammer, but Hellhammer was the end of it. Hellhammer was just about extremity. And we wanted to incorporate so much more on top of that, musically, visually. We just didn't want to have any limits. We didn't want to be tied to any unwritten heavy metal laws. And this is why we took what we loved in Hellhammer, which was the heavy metal root of it all, and built such a huge concept on top of it, which was Celtic Frost. And as Martin said, we made this booklet at that time, before home computers and internet. We did this on a typewriter and glued like pictures and everything. We literally gave them an idea of what the album covers would be, what our image would be with each album, what the songs would be about. It was totally detailed. It was insanely detailed, and I mean, the record company probably never saw anything like that.
If you look at the history of Hellhammer, there's one name that has lasted throughout, and that was Tom G. Warrior, you know, because he had the will, he had the determination. And then I think when I came into the game, there was the second part, you know, that started working this project into a band, into a unit, you know. And we were looking for somebody else to join in. We just didn't have anybody at the time that was really, you know.
It was a miracle we found each other in that world that they just described. And to find a third guy was close to impossible.
You know, most of the guys at that time, they wanted to get laid, they wanted to smoke dope, drink some beer on the weekend, party, hang out, the usual thing that you want to do when you're like somewhere between 13 and 18, you know?
Well, and if they played music, they wanted to emulate AC/DC, which at that time was the biggest metal band. I mean, the big thing in Switzerland was to sound like AC/DC, which of course Crocus perfected, but there was a million other bands. And if you came with that music, before the advent of extreme metal, if you came with the music that we played, they were just like, no fucking way.
This was our life. With the other guys, they put a lot of times they put a guitar around their neck and boom, I am Yngwie Malmsteen. Boom, I'm whoever, I'm Richie Blackmore, whoever is big right now. They were just acting it out. And if you listen to the music, you know, if you look at what time frame we're talking about, you realize that we were working hard. I mean, we recorded Apocalyptic Raids and Morbid Tales in the same year. We're talking about 84 for both records.
It was like within half a year.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a giant jump, I would say, between both those records, you know, in quality of the writing of the music, in the execution of the production. You know, we didn't have any clue with Apocalyptic Raids, and we worked our asses off to exactly get what we want with Morbid Tales when we entered the studio.
I think an important part, if we talk about this, is the desperation that Martin hinted at before. We had labored in a vet rehearsal room for like 2 years to get this record deal, and we never expected to get one, but then we got one, and it was to us, this was the holy thing. It was, and we didn't want to lose the record deal. We knew Hellhammer needed to be improved upon massively. We needed to change everything. We needed to become a different band, a better band. But how to sell that to the record company? There was such desperation, such fear to be thrown back to being nobodies without a record deal. That's why we labored so hard on this. We knew we had this one chance, and it wasn't even a given. We had to sell this to the record company. We had to sound much better. We had made this huge concept, but we also had to accomplish what we wrote down. So that's why we practiced like a professional band, even though we were little kids that had just attained a record deal, and we were nobodies. Nobody knew us. There was, our music didn't have scene, but we were there insanely professional for that time. And most of that we only realized later how far ahead we were of ourselves.